Hey guys, this is Ed Miller. I am here at Eurolinx, and I am playing some 25 cent, 50 cent, no limit, and some six max. You can see I have Queen Jack on the button here. I flopped a gut shot, and I got check min raised out of position. Um, and now the guy's checking to me again, and I think I'm going to go ahead and bet again. Um, and hopefully we won't get check raised again off our hand. And our hand was good. I like that. If somebody, when people check raise and then check the next street, that's usually a lot of weakness. And so I generally just go ahead and fire again. If people do that, it's mostly people just, you know, they tried their little bluff and then it didn't work, and so now they're giving up. I'm not going to say it's always that, because it's not. But, I find generally, in situations where people check raise the flop and then check the turn, that's generally a pretty weak betting pattern overall. I'm going to go ahead and open this King 9 suited. And actually, for that reason, it's something I actually do against good players. I don't really bother against bad players so much. But we're gonna see. This guy just since this guy just bluff raised us, I'm gonna expect him not to do that again. I'm gonna expect him to give up a large percentage of the time. And here I'm just gonna, if he can call on that flop, I'm not gonna try to take the pot from him. So, but yeah, so actually that's a betting line where I check raise the flop and then go ahead and try to check raise all in on the turn. It's something I do with good hands sometimes against good players who know that pattern where you check raise the flop and then check the turn is generally a pretty weak pattern. I'm gonna go ahead and let's see, what are the stack sizes here? It's kind of a big raise. I'm gonna go ahead and just fold the Jack 10 suited out of position there. It's a little bit of a tight fold. I might call. I certainly would be more inclined to call um, if the raise size were a little smaller, but I'm going to go ahead and muck it there. I'm going to fold the King 3 offsuit. This is another hand. It's a bad player. He's loose and aggressive. He opens a lot of hands. And it's really not, and he only min raised, so it's only half a bet to call. But, in my videos, I try to show you the good places to get loose, or sort of the safer places to get loose with your opening range. And then sort of call out some of the little bit less safe places to do it. So I'm going to generally be playing a style that's pretty tight out of position in my videos here. So that's what you're seeing here. The thing is that while you're playing these stakes, 25 cent, 50 cent, 50 cent, a dollar. $1, $2. When you're playing stakes like that, I really don't think you can really play too tight out of position. Really, you can play too tight theoretically speaking, and you might win a little bit faster if you played a little bit looser in some circumstances, but okay, so Arthur Dent looks like a really laggy player here, but we're gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and let him have this one. I expect if I check, I expect him to bet pretty much any turn, no matter what, and I'm not gonna be able to call that turn bet. I would tend to call that flop bet if I thought that he would give up on the turn, with say spades or something like that, but since he is really laggy and I don't really expect that, I'm just going to let that one go, being out of position. And so here I have Queen 5 suited on the button. A little bit of a loose open, but again, this is the right place to go ahead and open up is when you're on the button. We'll see if Arthur Dent here, the laggy player, starts 3-betting me a lot. I'm going to have to adjust to that. You'll see how I do that. But for now, I'm just gonna play my default strategy, which is to raise a lot of hands on the button. And Queen 5 suited, is among the hands that I tend to raise in these games. If it's folded to me on the button, I also tend to isolate a limper with that hand. Because people do play pretty predictably. You can generally get the best of a lot of players. So, by playing hard on the button. So, I'm going to do that until someone forces me to stop. That's basically my default strategy when I play in games like this one. When you're playing, I think one of the most important skills. I'm a big fan of not trying to, as my sort of philosophy about how to get better at poker, or to get better at anything, but poker qualifies, is to sort of take it one step at a time. You don't have to do everything perfectly right out. My goal certainly isn't, and your goal should be to, have the gaudiest win rate around. In fact, I think it's funny. Like I was looking around, around the internet, and you'll often see people comparing, my win rate is 17 big blinds per 100 hands, and yours is only 14, and therefore you suck. And I really think, apart from that being sort of silly, I think that people, okay, so I have the aces. I'm going to raise a little bit more out of position here. We had the open limper up front. That's going to be a pocket pair a lot of the time, and I don't really want to get stacked if he flops a set. So he went ahead and folded. I'm going to go ahead. This is fairly dicey flop here. I'm going to go ahead and bet the pot, and I'm going to get it all in against this stack size. So, but he folded. What was I saying? By the way, I expect, even though I bet that hand pretty strongly by making the big raise pre-flop and the sort of pot size flop bet, I do expect Mickey players like this tend to stack off relatively light on flops like that. They're not necessarily wrong to do so. Necessarily, they might have been wrong to call the pre-flop raise, but then once the flop comes, if they flop middle pair or bottom pair and they're going to stack off, and they're not necessarily wrong to do that, because oftentimes I'm going to have an ace queen or an ace jack and a missed a flop, and they're going to be ahead. So, but yeah, so my approach to learning poker, I was talking about people comparing win rates and, blah, blah, blah. And that really, a lot of that really makes me kind of ill. At one point, it's important to understand, or it's important to have sort of, some kind of benchmarks to compare yourself. Like, you're playing, I sort of liken it to playing golf, when you're playing golf, you're not playing against other people, you're playing against the course, right? You're trying to play as well as you can, and you're trying to achieve, the best score that you can, in your way, according to the course. And you're going to have a certain skill level, and then you're going to play the course in a certain way, and you might even be trying to work on certain parts of your game, and so there's all those different factors, and the good thing about golf is that, so here, Arthur Dent open raises, and he's the laggy player. I'm gonna be inclined to, I'm gonna be inclined to go ahead and 3-bet him here with this hand and see what happens. So, I think people, Alright, I'm going to go ahead. This is just such a dry flop. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to, since he is a laggy player, I'm going to make sort of a weak-looking bet at him. I'm going to bet like 6 and see if I can't get a bluff raise out of him. I seem to be having some network problems here. I hope I don't get the hand folded me. So he called me. I'm gonna go ahead and check and see if I can get a bet out of him at this point. I don't really think he has much here. He might have an ace. Um, and if he has an ace, I'm gonna go ahead. Yeah, he did. He did bet it. I'm gonna. I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to flat call and try to get some action. And part of me wants to just raise all in. I'm gonna raise all in and just hope he calls me. Yeah. I mean the thing about situations like that is that um and I'll get back to what I was talking about before. So here we have ace queen offsuit. We're out of position. This guy could be isolating on the button. I'm going to go ahead and 3-bet this one too. And we get pushed on, so I'm gonna fold that. So yeah, with that ace queen hand, the thing is that what am I putting him on? I 3-bet him pre-flop. He calls. I bet small on an ace a7 flop. He calls. Okay, here we go. We got a bunch of limps to us on the button with ace queen suited. I'm gonna go ahead and you know what? I'm gonna jack it up to 4. What kind of hand does he have? He's gonna have a small pocket pair a lot. He's gonna have an ace sometimes. He's gonna have a small pocket pair sometimes. Here we get 3-bet. Interesting. Okay, hold on. We have a bit of an interesting situation here. So we have ace queen, a short stack just 3-bet us, and a real loose player called the 3-bet. I'm inclined, because he's so loose, I'm inclined to shove. And and hope I'm getting a decent overlay. The flop certainly wow, we we beat the aces there. So hope you understood why I made that play. It was sort of based on I'm really not folding after that to the short stack. I made the raise so large, and he had the little min raise there. I'm definitely not folding in that circumstance. And then at that point, once this player calls, I don't necessarily want to give him a flop, especially when I'm already committed against this other hand. So, I get him to fold pocket pairs sometimes when I'm ahead and so forth. So, all right. So the short stack is raising us again. We're definitely going to fold to this. All right, we flopped a set of kings here. You can see these games are pretty loose. This is a pretty actiony flop. I kind of expect someone to have an ace. So I'm going to go ahead and bet pot. everybody's at some point of learning. I mean, even if you're the very best, I mean, Kyle and Dusty and Nick um, and Bryce are all, basically at the top of the game. I mean, they've won just insane amounts of money, and they're all, some of the best players in the world, but they'll all happily tell you that, I mean, they're constantly trying to get better, and they're constantly thinking. All right, so here we go. We have actually a pretty juicy situation there. This guy makes it 3 a lot when he open raises, so I'm not going to assume that's a big hand necessarily, and I'm going to go ahead and jack it up here. I'm going to make it actually 14, a little bit bigger, and I'll go ahead and open 9-7 suited. That's a little bit loose from that position for the style that I've been playing for these videos, but alright, so here we go. We have a pretty big pot here, and I actually just like, even though we got called, these guys are so loose, and this board is so dry that I'm just going to push. I'm just playing push and pray at this point. And I got called. And I'll explain that move in a little bit. And here I will get... I will bet my flush draw. So the reason why I played that was actually sort of an interesting hand, that push and pray hand. So interesting. So he sort of min-raised me. Now the pot is 12, and I have to call 4, and I got a flush draw, and I'm probably getting the rest in if I catch a spade. So I'm going to call this. I'm not going to try to get the money in. I'm just going to call it because I have almost no fold equity, I think. So I'm going to just call and then fold to this all in when I miss on the turn. And I think because he gave me that slightly positive chance to call for the flush draw there. But anyway, on the left here, and this is sort of atypical for online tables, I would say. So a lot of you guys, but it's very typical in live tables, which is interesting. So this is clearly a loose table. People are calling raises. I raised to a pretty large amount on a previous hand with the 9s. I got called in 3 spots. Not typical for an online game. And now here, a guy opens, a loose player calls, I make a big 3-bet, and I get called in both spots. So again, this is, I would say, this kind of thing happens in live games quite frequently, but not necessarily so much in online games. And the thing is that when they're making these loose calls, the pot was $40. There was only $60 left. And at that point, I've got ace king high. The board is queen 3 deuce. So obviously that's a dry flop. I'm not going to expect. I'm going to fold this 8-7 offsuit to the raise. I would have played for another quarter there, but I'm going to fold there. It's such a dry flop. I'm going to expect people to miss. And the reason I push there is, one, sometimes people will sort of outthink themselves and fold small pairs. It's not necessarily outthinking themselves because, my range there is really strong. I'm 3-betting pre-flop. And I'm pushing on the flop, and obviously that's, it's going to be, aces, kings and queens a lot of the time too. All right, I'm going to go ahead, after these limps, I'm going to go ahead and jack this up to 3 again. And in this hand, I am going to go ahead and bet half the pot into this limper. See what happens. So my total range there is very. Here, I'm going to go ahead and try to get it in against Foobs here. I'm going to be a little bit more careful against the other player. So I'm going to bet 7, maybe. I got king queen again. So this player raised. This player's got a very low raise percentage. I'm just going to throw the ace-5 offsuit away. So the basic point about the king-queen play, alright, here, this is interesting too. This player's not very aggressive. I'm going to go ahead and bet the flop, and with the plan of I'm not committed to this hand, but I'm gonna bet hard on the flop, and if we get check raised, I'm probably gonna let the hand go. Here, pretty tight player opens. I'm gonna just fold my ace-10 on the button. All right, so this is a tough situation here. This player's not particularly aggressive. It's a very drawy board. Could be in trouble. Could have a set easily. Could have a number of things. Could have ace-queen, but he could have a hand like queen-jack or queen-10. Overall, I'm basically not committed to the hand, and I'm just gonna let it go. It's a little bit tight. You know, if the player were more aggressive, I probably would have called there and maybe seen what came off on the turn. But the thing is, I don't really like my hand. You know, once he check raises me like that, you know, even if a blank comes off on the turn, I don't love my hand at that point. If he's betting into me, you know, if a blank comes and he checks, then I basically put him on a draw and bet. But that's a pretty big parlay, actually. I don't think that's going to happen too often. And in any other scenario, I'm pretty much giving up on the hand. I don't even love my hand if I catch a king or a queen, because I think that's going to be a set. Well, he's real loose pre-flop, so I can't assume that he's got a pocket pair. So, but, you know, it's a tough situation here. So here, lucky get is loose and pretty bad. Looks so I'm gonna go ahead and bet, c-bet this. You know, because he's gonna have missed this flop a lot. I expect to get called here actually by worse hands with some frequency, because he is so loose, and we saw him call that bet earlier with a weaker hand. So I would expect him to call. I would expect him to take one off with hands like Queen Jack there, honestly. You know, and I'm going to go ahead and get some value from that. It's one reason you could see the bet size. I made a smaller bet size there. It's not just because, you know, my hand wasn't that strong. I don't size my c-bets based on my hand strength nearly as much as I size them based on the flop texture. You know, on a king 8-8 flop, I'm going to tend to bet half the pot, you know, even with a king, like ace-king. I'm going to tend to bet half the pot, you know, in that situation. Two really bad players limp. I don't like my hand, but I'm going to go ahead and raise it and see what happens. Ace-6 offsuit is not a great hand, but, you know, these two really loose players limped in, and I just like to go ahead and go after them. You know, it's a little bit shaky because they have been calling. All right, and here we go. This is another really dry flop. I'm going to go ahead and c-bet this one for half the pot also. So again, I tend to bet dry flops a little bit less than coordinated flops, like that queen 9-8 flop. I bet less. So now I get called. You know, this could be obviously a number of things, but usually it's going to be some kind of pair. And you know, this is a loose player. This player just check raised me off a hand, and I'm going to just, you know, it's hard to know exactly what's going on here, because I would say this is a pretty weak pattern here. This pattern is almost begging me to raise off him, but, you know, you just have to give them, you know, even bad players tend to have something when they call really dry flops like that. Usually, so, you know, and obviously I don't have much, so I'm just going to give that one up. I'm going to check here again on the right. I'm just going to try to check this one down. I'm going to call it 50 cents. Often that 50 cents is just total air. Yeah, now we're going to fold. The reason I called that 50 cents, I would actually not call, like, so that 50 cents was about a half pot. And I called it, but I wouldn't call, say the pot were $10 and he bet 5, I would fold. And the reason is that often those min bets, when it's a min bet, it's often different, and a lot of times it's just total and complete air. Um, and I would expect after calling that, I'm getting 3-1 call that, and I expect more than 25% of the time. I think for the hand just to go to get checked down from that point on and have me win. So that's why I called that, but it was only because it was a min bet. I wouldn't necessarily call an arbitrary half pot bet there. So here's another bet that is a little bit fishy here. But this player is pretty passive. All right, here I just made the decision for me. Once again, I'm going to go ahead and bet this flop. If reality check goes after me again, yeah, I'm inclined. Reality check keeps calling me and floating me. I'm intending to check it to him, and then I actually might raise him if he bets here. I get a feeling that he's floating me a little bit. Okay, well, he didn't go ahead and bet. Interesting. So Lucky Get bets. Now, Lucky Get did this before as a stone bluff. But again, that's a pretty dry flop. I'm going to give him credit. Yeah, they both had sevens. So this is another dry flop. So you see, even though I have a king, I'm going to go ahead and just bet half pot here. Well, actually, and he's also a real short stack. So I'm happy to bet small and sort of... I'm going to get it in no matter what comes, no matter what happens. I'm going to get the money in here if he were to challenge me there. Out of position with the Jack-10 offsuit. I'm going to fold that. Okay, so getting back to sort of my theme about comparing win rates, this has sort of been, something for me. People try to go out. So I've been playing online poker a lot recently in the last few months, and a lot for me at least, because I never used to play too much. And I've been posting some blogs about it, and actually my results have been very good. I've moved up. I started with about $500, and now my bankroll is about $6,500. After about 2 months of play, I started at 50 no limit, and now I'm playing 200 no limit. And I've been winning it at what I consider a very solid clip. I hope to get in another maybe 20,000 hands next month, and maybe start taking a crack at the 400 no limit games. So, I consider I'm very satisfied with my results, and yet, I've seen some people on the internet, kind of knocking me and saying, "Oh, why isn't Ed winning faster?" And I just think it's funny. I think it's a really weird attitude that, you take someone, naturally I'm a coach and I'm coaching poker and I've played poker as a living before, so people are going to expect me to, they're going to hold me to a higher standard than the average player, which I understand. But I just think it's funny, the whole notion of you're not winning fast enough. And it's like, poker is a fluid thing, and it's something that, even the best players are always learning at, always getting better, always trying new things. And I don't think that, I think the whole notion of you're not winning fast enough is really absurd. I'm going to go ahead. This flop is kind of dry, and I have some loose players behind me, but I'm going to go ahead and bet my hand if I don't run out of time. I think that notion is just silly, and I think it carries over to you and your play. Whether you're winning fast enough, or whether you're winning at all, or whether you're satisfied with your results, really, a lot of that just depends on, okay, I don't like that card. I'm going to go ahead and check it. This is a pretty passive player. I expect him to check it back if he was calling with, something, I'm just going to give up here. So, whether you're winning fast enough or not is basically only for you to decide. It's only, are you satisfied with how things are going? And you could be running good, running bad. There's no yardstick by which you could say, are you winning enough? Are you winning fast enough? Like, honestly, I mean, there's two things that I think about. One is no matter how much you have or haven't won in the past, that is the past, and you have an unlimited number of hands in your future. So whether whether you think you've won enough money or not in the last 50,000 hands, you have 50 million hands in front of you. I mean, hopefully, hopefully you live long enough to play 50 million hands. And so really, in that thinking, it really doesn't matter at all how you did in the last 50,000 hands. You're learning, you're getting better, and every 50,000 hands from now on, you're going to perform better. So ultimately, if you take that to its logical conclusion, it's really irrelevant how you've done in the last 50,000 hands. And similarly, it's sort of irrelevant, how I've done or whatever. And I think it's a healthier attitude toward online poker, because if you're constantly obsessing about, man, I'm only winning at 2 poker tracker big blinds per 100, and a player at this level should be winning at least 3.5, and where's my 1.5 poker tracker big blinds? I mean, I just think that's such a toxic way to think. Unfortunately, I did not intend to fold that ace jack. I got network connection problems, and folded my hand for me. So hopefully, I'm not gonna be kicking myself for having that hand folded out. That's, to me, the most frustrating thing about online poker is how many hands get folded by the software because my network connection died. Actually, I put this on autofold, but I'm actually probably going to go ahead and play it. It's tough. These guys have been calling, and it's really not. I'm going to fold it. I'm folding it because if I raise, I expect actually at least 2 calls. And I'm just going to hit the flop so rarely. And this reality check guy seems to be maybe trying to steal some pots from me. Trying to outplay me a little bit. Play loose. And, so I don't want to mix it up quite that weak in that situation. So, yeah, anyway, I don't know. I mean, I got sort of rambly, but I feel really strongly about it. I think people are way too ego-driven, in poker. I see poker as a very personal experience. I mean, ultimately, when you're playing poker, you're sitting at home alone, and it's much like playing golf. You're playing against yourself. Is who you're playing against. There's a course there, and some people play the course and they score better than you do, and some people play the course and they score worse than you do. But ultimately, when you play golf and when you play poker, you're playing against yourself, and you're saying, how well can I do, and can I improve? I shot 85 this time. Maybe if I keep working on my game, I'll shoot 82 next time out. And that's, to me, that's what poker's about too. And I think, so I always think it's sort of ridiculous when people get very hung up on win rates, especially since win rates are subject to so much variance too. So, if I won 7 poker tracker big blinds per 100 hands, or you won 7 and I won 4, in the last 25,000 hands, I mean, what does that say? I mean, it says nothing, So, ultimately the only thing that matters is A, are you satisfied? And if you're not satisfied, there's nothing to beat yourself up over. Just, you're going to keep learning and keep improving, and, eventually you'll get where you want to go, and that's sort of the way everything is. So, so that's my view. I kind of wanted to talk, it's been on my mind lately. I just think, I think I've seen people get hung up about it. I think Reality Check has given up on this pot, so I'm gonna go ahead and try to take my share of it. I'm gonna fold the Jack-6 offsuit here. This guy's pretty tight, even though I'm in position, and I'm gonna fold the Deuce-3 off. So that's my feeling. Hopefully people agree with me. It's not the most common way for people to view it. People are always breaking out their win rates and saying who's better than who and whatever, and I just think it's all nonsense. So here we have a short stack. We have reality check and a short stack. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and raise this. It's a little bit dangerous with the short stack. I might be forced to get it all in on some flops that I'm not really happy about. I'm on everyone folded, so perfect. And I'm going to open the sevens. Unfortunately, one of the really... Oh, it looks like Rajoa is a short stacker. He's come in for 10. I have some stats on him now, and indicates a short stacker. This is actually an interesting flop for the sevens. It's a very drawy board. I think I'm going to go ahead and bet 350. This guy has shown some potential to try to steal pots too, so that's why I was thinking about how I wanted to handle that. Fortunately, he just folded, so it wasn't a problem. But yeah, I hope you, I don't know. I hope you guys agree with me, or at least can see my point of view about measuring yourself and measuring win rates. You know, ultimately, the only person that matters is you. The only person that matters about what you think about how you play is you, and that's and I really do feel very strongly about that idea. So anyway, so I think I'm gonna wrap this up a little bit. This has been a little bit of an interesting table here, given it's been a very loose table. I mean, I've been raising and getting called in 2 and 3 spots regularly. It's been playing honestly more like a live game, which is good. So you guys that play only online, now you know a little bit more of how live games play. And then I got that sort of live game play of just shoving the of playing push and pray on that. So reality check has been calling a lot of... Okay, so they auto-checked here. I'm going to bet and expect to pick this one up. When I check and they just zoom through and check, I'm not going to expect to see a whole lot. And I'm actually... You know what? With reality checking behind like that, I'm actually going to go ahead and bet this one for value here. I think he's got a 6 a fair percentage of the time, or hearts, something like that. That's a online tell. I mean, that kind of tell works live too, somewhat. But he had his auto check button pressed there, and that's just very major sign of weakness. So I'm going to play one more orbit on each table, and then maybe we'll look at a couple of the hands. We'll look at that ace-king hand again, and so forth. What was I thinking? Yeah, so what I did there, actually, I played that hand differently because I saw you had the auto-check button clicked. Is that I was pretty sure I had the best hand on the turn when a 6 came, and B, when he calls, I have to put him on either a draw or a 6. Really, I mean, I can't put him on too much. He's not going to put the auto check button on if he flops a pair. I mean, it's possible. I just people don't often do that too much. I'm going to go ahead and raise this one. You don't have to raise. I know Dusty likes to raise in situations like this, and sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But that button limp is so weak. The ace-5 is strong against his range. The only problem is that we're not playing pre-flop. We're playing... I'm going to go ahead and turn auto post off on both tables. The only problem with that line of thinking is that you don't play the hand pre-flop. We have roughly 100 big bets behind. This is going to be my last hand on this table. Might as well go out with a raise. Actually, those players aren't playing so much anymore. So here, we're going to sit this one out. what was I saying? Yeah, so I mean, the good thing about raising is that you're going to get a fold a lot. That's a weak hand a lot of the time. The bad thing is that when you get called, it's really, unless your opponent is really bad as well as loose, which, obviously tends to go together. So this is a little bit of these players both seem to be pretty decent. So this is a little bit of a loose, this is sort of the margins of my button opening range, against two pretty good, decent looking blind players. But yeah, so there's upsides and downsides to raising a hand like that out of the blind. You can't go too far wrong. I mean, when people limp on the button, it's not by definition a bad play, but the people who do it do tend to play bad. So that's sort of my general thinking there. So we got one more hand in here, and then I will pull up Poker Tracker to see how we did. And I hope we played a couple interesting hands. I hope I can find them on the Poker Tracker. I've never pulled up Poker Tracker after the video, so we'll see how that goes. I hope you sort of enjoyed my thoughts. Okay, so now I'm done here. I'm going to sit out, and let's bring that Poker Tracker up. Alright, we got some weird error on the Poker Tracker, so I don't know if all the hands got pulled, but here we go. Here is the Poker Tracker. So we had a good session. We won 3 buy-ins, so that's pretty awesome. And I had 25 VPIP. Folded my blinds to steals a lot. That's obviously not typical. I don't usually fold that much. And I attempted to steal 60, which again is not typical. But these stats, 25, 23, fairly typical for how I play. I tend to fall more in the 23, 5, 19, 5 is sort of where my stats tend to converge. But it's pretty typical for how I tend to play. Let's look at the big hand. So this was obviously the biggest hand. Let's try to play it back. So here we had Ace King suited, right? And Foobs here open raises to $3. So he puts that sort of big open raise out there. And Lucky Get that really loose player calls. Now I remember that $3 raise was sort of typical for him. This was not a particularly large raise size. I saw him do it several times. So I went ahead and 3-bet the Ace King of Hearts. Folded back around to both players who call. Now, Lucky Get, I put on just a super wide range because he's really loose. And he's actually sort of the main reason. I would probably 3-bet anyway, but I'm definitely going to 3-bet with him in the pot just because he is so loose that, you can just get a lot of value out of him by 3-betting. So now Foobs calls. It's possibly a little worrisome. I don't really know what he has, but that's pretty strong. Under the gun, open raise, and then calls a pretty big 3-bet when he's sandwiched. But nevertheless, the flop comes Queen Deuce 3 with a heart. Now notice the pot is 42, and I only have $60 left. So all I have is basically the pot and change left in my stack. And so when they check to me, I don't know, Poker Tracker's being slow. I must have pushed this a bunch of times. Alright, actually, let me back this up. So, they check to me, and on a flop like this, what does Foobs have? I don't know. He's got a pocket pair. He's got Ace King. He's got, I don't know. Maybe he's loose. Maybe he's got Ace 10, Ace Jack. Maybe he's got suited connectors, 10-9. It's hard to know. I mean, if I had a better idea, I might have obviously a better idea. But the thing is that when I push here, I do expect hands like 6s, 7s, 8s to fold sometimes. And the thing is, when they call, so first of all, I don't expect to be against aces or kings or queens. Here. Maybe queens. But I don't really expect to be against aces or kings. I would really, really expect someone to have re-raised me at some point with those hands. Not for sure, but I definitely discount them. Ace queen's a definite possibility. And then pocket pairs are a big possibility. And the thing is that when I push, I think a lot of people end up folding the 6s, 7s, 8s. They put me on that big pair. I 3-bet pre-flop, and then I go ahead and push on this flop. And, I think I might get those pairs to fold. And even when they don't fold, I have significant equity, because I have the 6 outs against those hands. I have obviously only 3 outs against ace-queen, plus the backdoor flush draw. So together, that's going to give me, I don't know, it's a 3-handed pot. Call it maybe 25% equity when called on average. I don't know. So the point is that I'm going to win the pot, I think. I think I do have some fold equity here. And then when I don't get a fold, I win the pot 25% of the time, and I'm betting, and I'm going to be getting at least 2-1 on my money. So, I don't actually lose that much when I get called by a better hand, usually, unless they have ace queen, king queen, which are definite possibilities. I would prefer, the play would be stronger if the flop were 9-3 deuce maybe, or the queen is a bit of a bad card, because the queen does hit ace queen, king queen hands. Even jack 3 deuce, I would feel stronger. Jack 3 deuce, I think I would feel like this is a significantly stronger play. With the queen is a bit of a bad card, but go ahead and push anyway. And I do get called actually in 2 spots, which means I'm almost certainly behind. So it's a good thing that I managed to catch running hearts. Oh no, I didn't. I caught an ace and won. So what did they have? I didn't even notice what they had when I was playing. So he did have king queen. So it turned out that I was drawing to those outs, and I did catch them. And he had ace 9. So again, this lucky get. So that shows you exactly how strong that 3-bet was pre-flop, equity-wise. Foobs had king queen, so he was dominated. Lucky get had ace 9, he was dominated, and he ended up calling that all in a dominated state there. So say Foobs has 6s, right, and Foobs thinks and folds on that flop maybe, and then lucky get has the ace 9 and calls it the ace 9. So, it may look like sort of spewy a little bit with the ace king, but I actually think it's a pretty good play. Furthermore, there's not really, I don't really think there's another great play with that, with the hand there. It's sort of like, again, I would feel a lot better about the push if it were jack 3 deuce. I think that's a pretty important distinction. I think the queen is a definite bad card for us, but I don't think it's bad enough not to just go ahead and stick the money in. So anyway, that's that hand. Were there any other big hands? Let me see. Session notes. Let's see this hand. Oh, this was the hand. Okay, yeah, we can play this hand. So this is the hand where we had the bunch of limpers, and then I had an ace-queen suited on the button, and I jacked it up to 4. And then I got min re-raised by the small blind. Now, in the heat of the battle, I didn't really appreciate this. This is a pretty strong. What's hard to know. It's a small stack, so who knows? Sometimes these guys play real bad, but that's often aces. But the thing is that, especially with lucky get in the pot here, having called, I just don't think it's aces. I don't know. Maybe it's aces. Bottom line is I just don't know the player, and you can't put somebody on aces necessarily, just because, some people tend to do this stuff with aces. So anyway, I definitely thought I had the best of lucky get. So I went ahead and pushed here. And I think, I mean, actually, I'm not sure necessarily that pushing is the best play here with Lucky Get. I think I played this hand before the Ace-King hand, but I actually think maybe I should just, instead of pushing on him, I think maybe I should just 4-bet him, like, I don't know, maybe make it 20, 25. Actually I mean, the bottom line is give him a chance to call with a weaker hand, rather than totally shut the door on him, because, he really was very, very loose, as you saw in that Ace-King hand, and, I would be happy to get the money in him in an Ace-Queen versus Ace-9 situation, but I didn't. I totally slammed the door on him. I get called by the short stack. He folds, and then I suck out, which I did a lot of in this session, so that hand worked out good too. So that was that. So those were two sort of interesting hands. Were there any big hands that I lost? Let's see. No, there actually weren't. So I ran really good that session. So I don't know. I might have played a couple hands a little differently. I think looking back, especially now what I know about not this Ace-King hand, the Ace-Queen hand. What I know about Lucky Get now, having seen that Ace-King hand, if I were to replay this Ace-Queen hand against him, I would go ahead and I would re-raise, that little min-raise, and just go ahead and, I mean, it turned out to be aces, and that's, it's a very suspicious play, but I would go ahead and 4-bet, but 4-bet to an amount that maybe Lucky Get feels like he can call, because I do think I'm going to be getting the best of that pretty often. So, just seeing how loose he was. So that may be how I would play those tables in the future. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed it, and that's a video. Please let me know what you think on the forums. And until next time, see you guys later.